Welcome everyone to the first in a series of our educational webinars. We are starting with a chakra series, and tonight, November 16th, 2005, we're going to look at the root chakra and survival issues. Before we get started though, first of all, our housekeeping slides. Here at the Evolutionary Astrology Network, you can study with us in a variety of ways. You can listen to the free weekly audio podcasts that we publish every week. You can subscribe to our Astral Library, and you can roll in one of our Multimedia Course segments. Here's a little slide on our Astral Library. This is where we've taken a dozen plus years of materials by myself and other evolutionary astrologers, and we have organized them by subject matter as you see on your screen. There are hundreds of hours here from both audio and video and some PDF materials as well. You can subscribe for 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, or you can do a monthly recurring that you can cancel at any time. Here's our EAN Multimedia Course. You can see the 3 different segments on your screen. Segments 1 and 2, we do offer materials and or online only. And online only gives you everything that you would receive physically in the mail. It just allows you the convenience of accessing it all from any internet-friendly device. Of course, a lot of the material in this segment is going to synergize with segment 3, our health and wellness astrology. And we will soon have, over the course of this winter, segment 3 available online as a digital option as well. So stay tuned for that. And so again, here we are looking at tonight's subject, the root chakra and survival issues. Starting right off, if there are if you have interest in more material on the chakras, here are some good resources for it. Of course, you can see that there was an original book from 1919, Arthur Avalon. This is an alias of a British judge who, in his off time, studied the esoterics, basically Sanskrit and Hindu traditions, and translated a lot of Sanskrit into English. C.W. Leadbeater, he was one of the early chakra writers, and he belonged with the Theosophical Publishing House. Annie Besant, Madame Blavatsky, going back to those days, about a century ago. And of course, one of our most popular ones, Anadia Judith, wrote Wheels of Life and Eastern Body, Western Mind. Carolyn Mace was also in there with her Anatomy of Spirit. This is not an inclusive list. This is kind of just a starting point for you if you're interested. And as we go along, I will also share with you Jeffrey Wolf Green's book on Uranus, in which he included some of his early chakra teachings as well. One of the things we're going to be working with here over this series is the 7 major chakras. And so I thought I'd touch in a bit on the numerology of the number 7. It's known in many different philosophies and belief systems throughout history. The Hindus had the 7 rainbow-hued veils of Maya. Egypt had the 7 stoles of Isis. Christianity, the 7 veils of Siloam, 7 days of creation, 7 virtues, 7 deadly sins. The Theosophists had the 7 cosmic rays of creation. The Kabbalah tree of life has the 7 horizontal levels of development. And of course, numerology, the number 7 is known for spiritual questing, psychic abilities, wisdom, and the occult. And of course, if you just look at our simple, mundane world, we have the 7 days of the week. We have the 7 stars in the constellation of the Big Dipper. We have 7 notes to the major scale in music. We have the 7 colors to the rainbow, which is the visible spectrum of color that we can see. Chakras originate from Eastern philosophies. We won't go into a whole lot of detail on those. You are welcome to study more if you want. They come from Chinese Oriental perspectives, from Hindu and Buddhist perspectives. There's a lot of the Eastern philosophies that have a history of chakras. They are known to be the consciousness behind any manifestation. They show us the mind-body polarity. Chakras vitalize the physical body. In other words, they are the energetic forces that lead to the manifestation of the physical body. Now, there are many chakras in the subtle body, and there are the 7 main chakras that are most commonly known and recognized. The Eastern philosophies, they have a history of being more concerned with the higher chakras, which are known as consciousness, over the lower chakras, which have to do with the material. Western philosophies, without knowing it per se at the beginning, have been more concerned with the lower chakras over the higher chakras. Now, as we will see here, it's all about the balancing of all the chakras. The higher ones are not better than the lower chakras, or vice versa. Now, specifically, chakra is a Sanskrit word, and it means wheel, circle, or disc of life force energy in the subtle body. As you can see here looking at your screen, you have the visual of the 7 chakras and their colors and their lotus symbols right here. And you can tell from the numbering that you can go from 1 to 7, or you can go this way from 1 to 7. There really is no right or wrong. This is why I put both numerical systems in here. So when we start here at the bottom with what we're going to work with tonight, the base or root chakra is known to be survival issues. Sacral sexuality. Solar plexus is power. Heart chakra, love. Throat chakra, communications. Third eye chakra, intuition. The crown chakra, cognition or awareness. There's many different words that you can use for these chakras, but you start to get the symbology of what we are speaking with as we look at these different chakras. Now, because these chakras are life forces, they're vortexes of energy in the subtle body that originate or give rise to the manifestation of the physical body. There are 2 main systems that the chakras are also known to correlate to. One is the nervous system. I'm not going to be the best at pronouncing a lot of these Sanskrit or Hindu words, so bear with me, please. So one is the nervous system, which we can see right here again, looking at these 7 chakras. These are the different major nervous systems that they deal with here. And the endocrine system, which is all of the glands, which are a concentration of cells. A gland is a concentration of cells in the body that then produce various hormones throughout the body that help keep everything regulated. And of course, nervous system, pretty easy to understand. You know, we can be hyperventilating if the pulmonary and cardiac nervous system is overextended. We can have a hypo, which is an under energy, and a hyper, which is an over energy between any of the various areas of our nervous system complexes and our endocrine complexes. Now, this is not a complete inclusive representation of the nervous system or the endocrine system. There are a lot of minor glands and minor parts to the nervous system as well. This information is taken from Anadia Judith's books, with the exception of Jeffrey Wolf Green here in his Uranus book talked about the fact that there actually was a Kundalini gland that secreted the Kundalini hormone. More on this as we come to it in future slides. But at this point, let's take a look at what we know as Kundalini energy. Kundala is the Sanskrit word for coiled. Here's that circle again. Now, Kundalini was a Hindu goddess who was known as the sleeping serpent, and she was coiled around the root chakra 3.5 times. And when her energy awakened, when the Kundalini energy is awakened, it travels up the Shushumna, I'm never going to get this one, Shushumna, awakening each one of these chakras and transforming its energy. Now I'll show you in a moment a picture of all of these, but this is, again, the Shushumna is a vertical column of energy current from the base of the spine to the crown. And there are 2 additional energy currents that travel around each chakra in figure 8, the Ida and Pingala, related to sun and moon. Now, I came across different representations of these in Anadia Judith's books, and these are the 2 that felt right for me. In her various books, I found it both ways. This one seemed to be the majority of the way. But what we're relating to here with these 3 various energy or nervous system currents is that in Oriental medicine there are 14 major acupuncture meridians, and the 3 most important ones relate to these 3 right here, the Shushumna, the Ida, and the Pingala. And please forgive me for bastardizing any pronunciations. You've got the words right there. Here's a picture from Anadia Judith's books, Wheels of Life. You see this straight line just going up from the base of the spine all the way up to the crown chakra. That's the Shushumna. And then you see this figure 8 energy going up on both sides. This is the Ida and Pingala energy currents. Now, for contrast, the caduceus, if I got it right, the caduceus, this is our basic symbol for medicine in the U.S. Look at the straight line of the spine and look at the 2 coils of the serpents that go up around, and you see the similarities here of how our Western medicine has gotten an a modern adoption of an ancient Eastern principle here. Now, one of the other things that, again, Anadia Judith spoke about was the current of liberation and the current of manifestation. And basically, what she is saying, as you look at any of these 3 major energy currents, is that chakra energy runs both directions. And wholeness is being able to balance all the chakras and running the energy in either direction, however it is necessary. So the liberation current is running it from the root chakra to the crown chakra. And the manifestation current is running energy from the crown chakra down to the base of the spine and the root chakra. And so again, this is something that becomes important to understand here. Remember, your Eastern philosophies were more interested in these upper chakras at the expense of the lower. And you will see this so well manifested if you look at the difference between India and the United States. India has extreme poverty. There is not a whole wealth of manifestation, but they have all of the the gurus and all the worshiping of the higher states of consciousness. Western philosophies, such as your United States, we don't really put much into the mystical side of our belief systems. It's there, but it's not the norm. We're into the material. How much money, how much manifestation, how much glamorization of sexuality and power can you have? And so some of what we see going on here as we're evolving into becoming a global community is there has to be a balancing of all the chakras. And there has to be an ability to run the energy either way. Someone who is not grounded in their lower chakras and only in their head may not be able to pay their bills, may not be able to ground themselves on planet Earth. They may be space cadets in the westernized world. Then you can have the opposite of this as well. You can have somebody who's so interested in manifestation that they pay no attention to their higher realms and they get stuck. Now, as we move through this series of classes, we will start with the root chakra and work our way up through this. But again, I would just like to say that one chakra is no better than the other 6 chakras. They are all equal and they all have to be balanced and running the energy to be in a state of wholeness. And we will come to this balancing more and more and more as we work with this blending of East and West. And if you go to the East, as we've looked at what's happened here over this weekend with the extremes of, the Middle East shooting up and doing such hurtful things in the manifested world over in Paris, France. Those are extremes of the chakras being imbalanced. We will have the extremists in the Islam culture crying that their belief systems are right, ours are wrong. But if you're really looking at them, they're right down here in these lower chakras dealing with power, dealing with the distortions of sexuality, dealing with the extremes of their manifestation to hurt. They are not activating these chakras. And if you look at planet Earth as a whole and the situation of climate change that we have going on here, we basically are also not recognizing some of the higher chakras, especially this heart chakra and connectedness to all species on Earth. We're running extremes of excess with the root chakra and it is out of balance on planet Earth. And we will see the extremes in weather that we're going to call climate change working to balance the manifestation of this root chakra. And until all species on planet Earth can bring in the balancing of some of these higher chakras as a whole, recognizing the divinity in all souls, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of how they want to, manifest their particular religions or customs on planet Earth. There has to be an honoring of that unity and diversity as we move into the Aquarian age. And there has to be a balancing of all these chakras as various species to bring planet Earth into a wholeness with all of its representation of all these chakras as well. Now, from the perspective of evolutionary astrology, the Kundalini gland is located at the base of the spine or the coccyx behind the root chakra. Jeffrey Green used to teach, if you've ever seen Grey's Anatomy, which was a English, I think he was a doctor, Henry Grey, Gray. In the early 1800s, they actually took cadavers that were unknown and dissected them and created, several hundred drawings of the inside of the human body. And if you've ever seen one of those that would show the spine, there would always be this little bump at the bottom of the spine, and it was never labeled. And Jeffrey Green would always say, from his understanding of studying Eastern philosophies, this was the Kundalini gland. And it actually secretes a Kundalini hormone. Now, the intention of Kundalini is to penetrate, which is a Pluto word, to the nucleus of any cell, to the nucleus of all our cells, to purge toxins, to be able to heal that cell, and to alchemically change the consciousness of any cell, to alchemically change the consciousness of all our cells. Now, when that Kundalini gland gets activated and starts its secretions, we have what's called the Kundalini experiences. Typical symptoms can be either intense heat or cold, to literally have the shaking of the body, or transitory paralysis. Now, these symptoms can come on and they can last a few moments. They can last hours. Some feel that they can last weeks, months. Not everybody notices that type of energy, though, as you start having the Kundalini gland activated. It's not a given. I've not noticed any specific Kundalini experiences on that physiological level, and yet I would say that I've had a lot of Kundalini alchemical changes in my life in my 50 plus years being here. Remember, again, the real purpose is to purge physical contaminants, those toxins, or cellular memories from other lifetimes. So when we start to have the Kundalini secretions, we can have a spontaneous past life memory. I've had those come up. We can work with that energy via past life regression work, like the deep memory processing work of Roger Wolger that I've been involved with for the last decade. Sometimes the Kundalini experience happens from coming into contact with an enlightened guru. That's the popularity of a lot of Eastern yogis coming to the West or visiting India. And that can happen, yes, but it isn't always necessarily a permanent evolutionary experience. Every once in a while it is. But most of the time it is a personal evolutionary experience or expansion of consciousness, as we will see here in a little bit. Now, when we start to have the Kundalini gland activated and the secretion of hormones coming through any or all cells, it can create any manner of physical symptoms that are not easily diagnosed by traditional medicine. So we can have extremes of experience, and we can have subtle awakenings in consciousness. There is no right or wrong. There is no quote-unquote norm that necessarily is experienced. Now, we also can have various experiences of psycho-emotional states as well as psycho-anatomical. In other words, sometimes it'll be a physical experience, sometimes it's going to be an emotional or mental or spiritual experience. There are those who have, out of the blue, had, an intense spiritual experience happening. And it could change their world from here on out. Or perhaps it changed their world for a few moments or a few hours. Sometimes we induce those types of experiences with breath work. Sometimes we induce those types of experience with the plant medicines or the human-made substances like LSD. It can come with various ways. When we have these types of situations arise up, and it starts to include the emotional and or the mental and spiritual, what's important here is that we don't gloss over the experience, that we don't deny or suppress the experience. We must be as open to it as possible. We must allow it. We must reflect upon it. What is happening here? What does this mean to me? Many times as these experiences come up, and again, physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual, it's quite possible they're originating from other lifetimes, and yet they're coming into consciousness and or being re-experienced in this life. That can create, again, the confusion or the instinctive need to suppress it for security reasons. And we're wanting to take the time to ponder it. We're wanting to work with various therapeutic models that help us relive it, that help us heal it, that help us understand it, that help us expand awareness as we heal and integrate and expand consciousness in these various ways. Now, many times they can be repetitious patterns or circumstances, and they'll come up and we'll go, oh God, do I have to go through this again? I did this 10 years ago. Oh, do I have to repeat this relationship experience? How many lovers do I have to go through this with? Anytime there is that repetition of those inner and outer circumstances, it means that there are still layers to this issue, and it has not yet been totally resolved. And so here again, you have got to be accepting of this type of energy and experience as it arises. And you've got to be open-minded and reflecting upon it, understanding it, healing it. However many layers I've got to peel away, let me do so. Now, one thing, we'll talk about this in more detail in the December class on the sacral chakra and sexuality, but it's become quite popularized that Kundalini energy is sexual energy, and it's all about raising that energy for sexual purposes. No. As that Kundalini gland is activated via the root chakra, and as the Kundalini hormone is secreted, the next chakra it runs into is the sacral chakra. But it is only one part of that Kundalini experience. The Kundalini energy will activate all 7 chakras. And so as it comes up the spine, there may be an increase in sexual energy, or there can be a decrease in sexual energy. And this will happen if the Kundalini energy is really utilized and consciously intended to purge out toxins, to purge out old cellular memories that we would like to resolve and heal and release, to have that expansion of consciousness. So don't assume that Kundalini energy is all about sex. Now, when EA looks at the chakra system, and this is coming from the perspective of health and wellness astrology, the chakras combined with the planets to understand areas of strength and weakness in the body. The specific planetary rulerships of the body are the foundations of strength and weakness, and the chakras are a support system. As we go through, again, this series, we'll work with these different chakras with some various charts. Now, when you're working with health and wellness astrology, there's a general rule that stressful aspects tend to show weakness. Conjunctions, semi-squares, squares, sesquisquadrates, oppositions. You notice how there's more stressful aspects than non-stressful? Non-stressful aspects tend to show strength, sextiles and trines, but every rule has exceptions. You've always, always, always must observe and correlate. Now, it's also known that the inconjuncts, the waxing inconjunct 150 degrees, the waning inconjunct 210 degrees, they are known to be aspects that could show some type of health crises or manifestations. But in looking at these general rules, again, observation correlation. And observation is What is the familial history? What is the soul's history on a karmic level that's unique to that soul, to the degree that they are conscious and aware of it? And then what are all the environmental conditionings that are going on? Is this someone who pays attention to diet, exercise, and rest? Or is it someone who abuses diet, exercise, and rest? So again, the chakras will be an adjunct to the planetary rulerships from head to toe, from Aries to Pisces. Now, at the end of this slideshow, I'm not planning to go through all 12 archetypes, but I did put in the slides for Pluto moving through the 12 houses and or signs, so you can get your Pluto generational stuff if you'd like to look at that. For instance, those of us who know that the Pluto in Leo generation may have to pay attention to weaknesses in the orb of the heart and in the orb of the brain, the Aquarius polarity. The Pluto in Virgo generation may have to pay attention to weaknesses in the nervous system and in the endocrine system with the Pisces polarity. So I've included some of that for you in your own personal studies as you'd like to look at your own chart, and using those 12 archetypes you can do some extrapolations of planets and other signs and houses as well if you'd like to. Here's Jeffrey's original Uranus book, Freedom from the Known. That was published in 1987. And here's a page from that book. This is how he looked at the chakra rulerships. And he said that the traditional planets, Sun through Saturn, these are the traditional rulerships from classic Indian systems. And Jeffrey added on the 3 outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And as you can see as we go through this, there is a triune of rulership here with the root chakra. And also Jeffrey and Anadia Judith both looked at North Node, or Ida, as ruler of the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the nervous system that runs eating, sleeping, relaxing. It's the yin stuff. And the south node, the Pingala, rules the sympathetic nervous system. And this is what we know as that fight, flight, or freeze to the nervous system. And this is yang energy that's going on. So again, I found astrology and evolutionary astrology pretty early on. I found EA pretty early on in my astrological studies, so I've always known this planetary rulership. There are other astrological systems that will have different planetary rulerships in regards to the 7 chakras. I'm not an expert on any other systems. I've looked at a few of them, but over my 30 plus years of EA, I've really come to relate to these particular planetary rulerships. And this is what I will work through as we go through this series right here. And by the way, I'm thinking that the Uranus book has been republished as an ebook. I'd go to Amazon.com and see if you can find it as an ebook, or see if it's a book on demand. If you can't find the Uranus book, contact me. I can help you get a transcript of it if you'd like. But I read this book back in the late 80s, right after it came out, and I natally have Uranus square the nodes, and it was like light bulbs for me when I went through this book and read it. It's a fantastic book. He not only speaks to Uranus, and he goes through Uranus through all 12 houses and how it affects the archetype of stress through the nervous system, as we'll see with Uranus here coming up. But he also takes Saturn into perspective and Neptune into perspective in this book. And they're the two planets that are on either side of Uranus. There's a key planetary pair between Saturn, individuated consciousness, Uranus, individuated unconsciousness. And then there is Neptune going into collective conscious unconsciousness. So it has its own unique planetary pair with both Saturn and Uranus. So I still think this is a fantastic book to add to your personal library if you are a student of evolutionary astrology. So from this method, when we look at the root or coccyx chakra, it has 3 rulers. Saturn rules the outer layer, as you see here in green. Uranus rules the middle layer, as you see here in blue. And Pluto rules the core layer or the nucleus, as you see right here in red. And by the way, all of these chakra photos, I want to give credit to Anadia Judith from her books. And she has allowed Wikipedia to use her chakras as long as she is sourced for credit. So as we go through these beautiful photos here, I'd like to also give her credit. Now the sound that comes from the root chakra as the Kundalini energy starts to become activated is the sound of the bumblebee. And this is the sound that you can sometimes hear if you're successful in any meditation exercises where you are working to specifically try and activate this energy. Don't ask me to pronounce this word, Muladhara. That is a Sanskrit word that means root chakra. This is some information from Anadia again. The root chakra is known for the color red. It has the longest wavelength and it is the slowest vibration of the colors on the visible spectrum. One of the main things about the root chakra is the right to be here and exist. So mastering the root chakra is understanding the body, accepting the body, and working to heal the body. Some of the key expressions of the root chakra are, again, survival, that ability to literally survive on planet Earth, to have gravity and grounding. It is consciousness condensed into some of its densest forms, the form of the body. Now, those of us who've studied any, quantum physics, we're knowing that we can go into a cell and into an atom with its nucleus and protons and electrons and break it down to quarks, and I don't know how minute it goes, but it seems like there's no end to it. And when we take our telescopes and microscopes and expand things larger and larger and larger and larger, that which we've known to be some dense physical form like a desk is really just energy moving around so fast it appears to be solid. So this is the energy of the root chakra. So when we look at survival, we're looking at the nourishment of the body. We're looking at that diet, exercise, and rest. We're looking at being able to put food into the body in order for it to survive, clothing the body for it to survive. Now, when we have, distortions or weaknesses of the root chakra, again, we can have somebody who doesn't seem to survive very good. They're floating around. They're unstable. They can't seem to get their life together. They don't have enough to eat, or they, can't manage to hold down an apartment with rent. There can be all kinds of examples of where the root chakra can be distorted or deficient, as well as learning to work with the root chakra and ground ourselves, to find, to literally put our bare feet out there on the grass and on the dirt, to feel that electrical current from earth coming up through our body. We also, as we're working to, balance and heal that root chakra, we're working with the issue of security. Now, as we go through this and looking at this chakra through Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto, again, it's almost like we can take some of these key expressions here and even distort those words. And we will be working to then heal some of the distorted words as well. We can be so interested in being secure in the root chakra that sometimes we become rigid as well as fragile. Both can be distortions of the root chakra. But the real point here is to be able to ground ourselves, to be in our form, whatever it is, to nourish that form, to ground it, to allow it to be the foundation that can then hold and support the other chakras as we work to move the Kundalini energy. So let's look at this a little more specifically now. When we look at Saturn and its rulership of the outer layer of the root chakra, what tends to happen is that the root chakra is dormant in most people. And this is going to be reflective in the EA perspective of the consensus state of consciousness, which is approximately 7 out of 10 souls in any country, any race, etc. This is the cowbells around the neck. They follow the consensus leaders. They consent to whatever the societal norms and rules are. There is intense pressure to conform to society in order to be secure. And so there's a tendency to, again, ignore or suppress that Kundalini energy. And one of the main things about Kundalini energy is it is all about the individualization process. To become uniquely who we are, to become a uniquely enlightened, aware, conscious soul, participating on planet Earth. So many times this actual Kundalini gland is physiologically dormant. And when that is the case, you can find a lot of imbalances in the lower extremities. Nerves, including that sciatic nerve, muscles, circulation, mobility, elimination issues. I try to list some keywords here, but don't look at everything as being totally inclusive. There can always be something else that I might have missed here. Allow yourself to start to get the picture of what we're working with here. Now, in Aries to Pisces astrology, Saturn is co-ruler of the prostate with Jupiter. And if you look at society from the perspective of consensus society, I forget what the statistics are, but by age 40, something like 60% of men have an enlarged prostate gland, one of the other glands in the endocrine system that secretes hormones, and the prostate secretes the seminal fluid, which is the regulator of semen. And so look at how we have so much consensus dormancy, and then how this reflects the enlargement of the prostate gland. Now, luckily for men, the prostate is one of the slowest growing glands, and men will many times transition from something else other than the prostate gland. But can you see, looking at it from the perspective now of this root chakra, how it can be part of this? So what else is happening here? And this is on my next page. Let me skip ahead here. With Jupiter, Saturn is co-ruler of the pituitary or master gland and the thyroid. Now, the pituitary gland rules growth and decay. Jupiter is the growth part of the pituitary gland. Saturn is the decay part of the pituitary gland. In puberty, if you have excess pituitary secretions, you're going to be overly tall. If you have a deficiency of secretion from the pituitary gland, you'll be short. Thyroid rules metabolism. Hyperthyroidism, Jupiter. Hypothyroidism, Saturn. So here again, you can start to see some of the things that Saturn rules, and where you can see perhaps distortions in the root chakra or weaknesses in the root chakra if you see stressful aspects to Saturn. All right. Saturn rules the anal canal, and it rules that lower sphincter muscle that allows us to have the elimination process. It also rules hemorrhoids, which is when this whole elimination process is not functioning very well. Look at our modern white food, white sugar diets. I was raised on that type of a diet. And I have Saturn in the 11th house. As you'll see here with Uranus's rulership of the core, I had a very closed down area here. I was on the constipation side when I came in because so much of my root chakra was not grounded, was not working right. And then the whole diet, exercise, and rest picture that came into it just exasperated the issue. Saturn rules the skeleton. It rules the skin, which is the container of the body. Saturn rules crystallization of any area of the body. For instance, gallstones, kidney stones. The most famous crystallization is arthritis. where the bones become crystallized. And then it makes it painful for the ligaments and the muscles to be able to move. We already said Saturn has general rulership of decay and death. Saturn is not the only ruler of death and dying. And there is no one and only specific aspect in astrology for death and dying. It can get to be a popular subject, but when you see various symbols for death and dying, you never know whether it's going to be literal or figurative. And the worst thing you could do as an astrologer or therapist is try to project your ego out there and determine which one it will be. Don't even go there. I always, in discussing it, say, look at it, both ways, and look at it as that potential to have rebirth in some way. Some of you will have heard about my energetic balancing work that I do. I spoke about having Saturn in the 11th house, and it's in Sagittarius. And back in the early 2000s, when Pluto was transiting Sag and it was starting to approach my Saturn, Pluto, Saturn are two different symbols of death and rebirth, ruling the root chakra, survival issues. I looked at that and I thought, I saw that transit coming up and I thought, I might need to pay attention to that whole health and wellness thing. I was already started, but I thought I might need to get a little more serious about this. And lo and behold, the world of energetic balancing showed up for me 15 years ago, and it turned out to be a phenomenal metamorphosis Pluto on my health and stamina and survival abilities, Saturn. I was going to include a slide. I didn't get that done. I'll try and put one, hold on, right here on the end here. I'll include one in the PDF for everybody so that if you're interested in more information, which I'm always happy to send you, you know how to find it through me. So again, another little example here for you. Saturn, as ruler of the root chakra, is also involved with the formation of calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus. And the lack of those, of course, is what's famous for the manifestation of arthritis. So, stressful aspects to Saturn can start to bring up all these issues. And as Jeffrey Green would like to teach, if you find yourself having issues that involve, these Saturn words, and Saturn doesn't have a stressful aspect, you go to the root chakra and you include Uranus and Pluto. And when you start to include Uranus, Pluto, and Saturn, you can almost always find stressful aspects and see some of this start to come along. Now, I, again, for many, many years, have not looked at health and wellness astrology as something that I'm going to look at the chart and project you have XYZ disease. No. Remember, observe, correlate. This is where there always has to be interaction with the chart in question, familial, individual soul, and environmental conditionings background. Now, remember, Uranus rules the middle layer of the root chakra. So what happens is that this chakra becomes activated whenever an individual makes the conscious choice to evolve and grow. Again, you don't have to have the dramatic Kundalini experience. You just have to resolve to grow. And so that potential to activate the root chakra and Kundalini energy is there for every soul. Because what are we here for in each and every lifetime? So when Uranus starts becoming activated in the middle layer, that means of the root chakra becomes activated, we are starting to liberate ourselves from consensus energy. So simultaneously, again, it creates an activation of that Kundalini gland and secretions. So the root chakra starts to quicken and it starts to vibrate differently, whether we feel it or not, whether we sense it or not. Now, Jeffrey Green would give the analogy, think of the crust of the Earth's mantle having fissure lines, earthquakes, and lava breaks through. The lava breaking through the crust. The crust of the Earth's mantle is that outer layer, Saturn. And the lava is Uranus and the Kundalini energy breaking through. And any of you who've ever seen lava, you see how hot it is. You see how it's liquid earth and it just goes anywhere and everywhere. Nothing can stop it until it cools off. So that's the symbology then of activating the middle layer of this root chakra. What tends to happen is there is an overall stress to the system, to the body, because that Kundalini is starting to purge the toxins in our system, and it's starting to move to the nucleus of each and every cell in our body. So again, Kundalini experiences are not always the happy, easy, all of a sudden my consciousness expanded and I just recognize all of the interconnectedness with everybody else on planet Earth. Sometimes that is a plant or human-made substance activating that, and we haven't done the preparatory work to get there, and it can be a really unnerving or unstabilizing experience. So the activation of the root chakra is best done through life experience. It's best done through therapeutic practices that can really acknowledge how this can be stressful and traumatic and hold the container of working through that to then find that inner acknowledgement, that inner peace. Again, there's not always any inner and right way. Sometimes it's going to involve the state of consciousness of the soul in question. I am someone who, 15, 20 years ago, participated in LSD and did it in very sacred way. There was one therapist per 2 participants. So it was very hands-on. It was very guided. And I think it was perhaps my, first stage spirituated state of consciousness. It was very intent how I went into it. I wanted to know past lives. I wanted to make things conscious. And I wanted to heal. And I was very, very intending when I went in that way, and I was able to hold that energy, was able to have a pretty good experience, drew up, 6, 7, 8 lifetimes. And when I was done with that experience, I think I journaled for almost a whole entire day, bringing up all those memories of the various lifetimes, what was interchangeable between them, how had they, wounded me and shut me down, how could I heal and draw my power back, etc. So again, I'm not judging here. I'm not saying there's one right way or wrong way. It's all an experiential path for any of us. But it is important that if this middle layer starts to become activated, you really have the awareness or some therapeutic guidance to be able to be helpful and understand that. Again, the whole purpose of the Kundalini energy and secretions is to purge the toxins, is to heal those cellular memories and to create overall healing, to allow that expansion of consciousness start to take place. Now, Uranus, Aquarius, 11th house. What I said about Saturn, it was Saturn, Capricorn, 10th house, okay? Uranus, Aquarius, 11th house rules the overall nervous system. It rules the central nervous system, which runs up and down between the brain and the spine. It runs the involuntary nervous system functions. Mercury has a secondary rulership to all of these. There's a co-rulership with Uranus and Mercury with the nervous system. Along with the nodal axis, again, we talked about this here, Uranus is a co-ruler of the parasympathetic nervous system with the north node. The involuntary movements, eating, drinking, sleeping, blah, blah. And the sympathetic nervous system with the south node, fight, flight, or freeze. Uranus rules all physiologic actions known as dehydrating. Anytime a planet activates natal Uranus, dehydration. Anytime a forecasting planet activates natal Uranus, dehydration. Anytime forecasting Uranus activates a natal planet, it's going to dehydrate that natal planet with whatever its rulerships are. So Uranus is very dehydrating in general, which is reminding me, talking, I need a drink of water. Big drink of water.
Sounded good.
It was good. Uranus also rules the brain in general. It, again, rules that whole synapsal or electrical structure of the brain, and it rules the dendrites, which are the repositories of new information. So as that middle layer of the root chakra gets activated, and there's expansion of consciousness going on here, that information, the brain creates new dendrites to hold new awareness, to hold new understandings, to hold new information. That's why when you go through a Uranian time, it can disrupt your sleep patterns because the brain is so activated, it can't always quiet down. I have Uranus in Aries opposing my Jupiter in Libra and my Mars in Libra 3 times each in 2015, and I've noticed that it has interrupted my sleep patterns because Uranus opposing Jupiter, just an expansions of understandings that are going on. Just reviewing all this material and prepping this class, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, this one's more conscious in my brain. And so maybe the dendrites were there and I could pull it out a little bit easier and faster than I used to, or that dendrite is getting more activated. Synapses In our brain, synapses are those nerve endings, and there's a sending one and a receiving one. And if you would like a great book on this, Evolve Your Brain by Joe Dispenza. He was in the movie What the Bleep. And I don't know if he was the originator of this, but what fires together wires together. And
wires together.
Yeah, what fires together wires together. And so there's actually an electrical energy that's shot in the space between these synapses, these nerve endings in the brain, and they literally become fused together if let me use an example. Nobody loves me. All my lovers leave me. All my lovers leave me. Another boyfriend broke up with me and left me. If you repeat that in your brain year after year, decade after decade, guess what? It is going to wire together until it becomes an automatic functioning part of your experience. So Uranus needs to shake it up. We need to practice refiring something. We need to get past the Saturnian conformities and liberate, loosen up, do it differently. That's the middle layer of the root chakra. Uranus also rules the lining of the lungs because that's where we have the nerves that regulate the breathing. And of course, all the different imbalances that can come about through the breath, the shallow breathing, the hyperventilation, the when there's stress to the lungs, the breath doesn't become enlivening, it becomes, toxifying. Look at all the things that we are exposed to through the air. Now, Uranus also rules what we call the hypothalamus, and this is one of those glands of the endocrine system. The hypothalamus is located in the lower central part of the brain. It is the main link between the endocrine and nervous system. Remember that photo of all the chakras early on where we had the nerves to the 7 chakras and we had the endocrine glands to the 7 chakras? Uranus is the connector of those, and it does that through the root chakra. So the hypothalamus emits, all the glands emit chemical messages, okay, and hormones. The hypothalamus emits the chemical messages that impact primary and instinctual brain to regulate the bodily functions. Again, there's that co-rulership of the parasympathetic nervous system. The hypothalamus is sometimes called the body's thermostat. And the hypothalamus has a direct link and impact on the pituitary gland, that master gland, and it stimulates or suppresses hormone secretions in the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland, remember, Jupiter co-ruler with that, growth and decay. Let me show you the next photo with this of how this works with Uranus in the brain. And again, coming from Jeffrey's book on Uranus. The hypothalamus is the thermostat. It sends messages to the pituitary to increase or suppress hormones. The pituitary master gland has an effect on every other hormone in the body. It has a special effect on the pineal gland, which is ruled by Neptune. We'll study this, excuse me, with the crown chakra and how grounded or enlightened we are. And then the pineal, in turn, affects the hypothalamus. So here is the hypothalamus right here. Here's the little pituitary, if you can see this red spot. And here's the pineal. And so this is a circuit that runs this way. Excuse me, I need to take a drink for a minute, Leroy. Oh, thank you for letting me do that. Okay, so so with Pluto in the root chakra, this is the inner layer or the core of the nucleus of the root chakra. If you're a student of evolutionary astrology, it is so easy to see how the root chakra and survival issue to the depth of our soul would be related to Pluto. And so Pluto, again, rules the Kundalini gland and the secretions of hormones from the coccyx or Kundalini gland. And so what are we all doing here with the evolution of our soul and its expansion of consciousness, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime? We are learning how to activate and interact with the Kundalini energy. We are learning how to purge all the karma, so to speak, and allow ourselves to evolve and grow. Now, excuse me, I had to burp now. Pluto rules RNA and DNA, or all the genetic coding within us. Now, this is, as I said before, specifically going to relate to familial genetics. What's genetics from mom and dad, paternal and maternal grandparents, etc.? What's the karmic genetics? Our soul will also bring through genetic weaknesses that are unique to our soul. What's one of the ways we know this? The sign Pluto's in the generation we were born into. The house that Pluto's in, and the individual soul karma that our soul is coming from and gravitates to. And then all of the planetary aspects to natal Pluto. Those will all be showing our individual soul karmic genetics. They can also show familial genetics as well. And so anytime we have genetic mutations that arise, they are ruled by Pluto. And whenever we have cellular mutations, and especially if those cellular mutations start to expand, what is it called? Cancer. Now, one of the things I did find out from all of my energetic balancing work for the last 15 years is that on an energetic level, 9 out of 10 of us are born with hereditary cancer. And it used to be activated in old age. And now with all of the distortions in our environment, with all of the mutations that we've had going on karmically through physical experiences over all kinds of generations, they've created genetic and cellular mutations that become activated faster and faster and faster. You notice how cancer is no longer a young person's disease. These are distortions of the core to the root chakra. This is showing and reflecting how distorted we are as a species, human species here on planet Earth. Pluto, rulership of all virus, bacteria, fungus, and prions. Prions are those incomplete proteins, and this is also coming from my world of energetic balancing. The most common prions we know are mad cow disease, scraping in sheep, wasting disease. We know it in the animals, and this is where prions accumulate in the brains of these animals, and they kind of go bonkers. Remind you of Alzheimer's, anyone? We in the realm of energetic balancing, we are aware of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of prions. And they don't just accumulate in the tissue of the brain. They tend to accumulate in the tissues of different organs as well. And so stay tuned for this to really be something more activated in the news. Excuse me a moment. I have a kitty who broke open the door, and if I don't move him out, we will hear him for a while. And so I'll be right back. Hey, Tweety. Oh, I'm sorry. Mommy's almost done. Yet. Go ahead to go see Daddy. Yeah, you go ahead to go see Daddy. All right, the door is shut. Very good now.
He has fresh food, by the way. I ran up to give him some fresh food, but he was bugging me for the last half hour, so he just kind of decided to move up to your office, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I didn't quite get the door closed far enough, and so moving along here, Pluto also has overall rulership of the colon, the intestines, I should say, plurally, and the peristaltic action of moving things through the intestines, colon, and moving it out. I lost a slide, and I didn't realize that I've lost it. So a couple more things here. It has co-rulership of the liver, which is where we assimilate and detoxify with Jupiter. It has co-rulership of the pancreas, which rules the secretion of insulin and glucagon, if I'm pronouncing that right. With the moon, it has co-rulership of the stomach and the duodenum. One of the things that I found fascinating with Jeffrey's studies in EA, at one point I thought, what does Pluto not rule? As I go through everything with what he says. And so there's a lot of issues that Jeffrey Green's teachings give rulership to. And when I think about that, and you look at the root chakra as survival, literally, figuratively, and you look at Pluto being the core of that root chakra, it can have relationship to so many, many different things. And over time, it just has started to make sense for me. So if in your own chart you see aspects of planets to Pluto, then you can go and start looking at what Pluto gets involved in co-rulership of whatever that other planet it's making an aspect to is. And those aspects then start to affect your core strength, your core ability to have life force and not only survive but flourish. Now, let me just for a moment here, what I'd like to do is go back and show you this slide here again. Here is one of the things also from the perspective of EA. Let's say that you have Mercury is in a first quarter square to Pluto. You would look at the root chakra and you look at the throat chakra. Now you know sensitivities to speaking here, but the point is you go to, when you start looking at your planetary aspects, and again, some of the more stressful ones, but don't always take it as an absolute, okay? You could look at the corresponding chakras and where you might have sensitivity up and down your spine here. Let me give you another example. I have Sun conjunct Mercury conjunct Neptune. And these three planets are conjunct Sun, Mercury, Neptune between 1 to 2 degrees Scorpio in the 9th house. I was a little space cadet early on. I didn't have any activation of my root chakra. It was so closed down. 8th house Pluto, Saturn in the 11th house, Uranus square the nodes. It was just all shut down right here. I was the little space cadet, and any time anything triggered me, my mind would go blank. And these are, again, 3 planets in a conjunction. So you can just start to study your own chart if you want to, through correlation of different planetary aspects to the chakra rulerships. Now, let me show you a chart example that I have, and then we can take some time for questions as well. Oh, there's my other, here it is. One thing that I would like to do is, if any of you are caring to participate in this series as it comes along, and you in particular have planets with this rulership of the chakras that as I showed you, like for instance, next month when we do the sacral chakra and sexuality, Jupiter and Neptune co-rulers. If you have stressful aspects to either one of those, or you are aware of any sexual imbalances, if you feel so inclined, you are welcome to volunteer your chart. Just contact us at EAN as you look at these different classes coming through. In regards to this class, we have a male here, February 25th, 1930, 1:25 a.m., Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is someone who is second stage consensus, right smack dab in the middle of consensus. Born 1930, raised in the Northern Plains, not a lot of religious imprinting, but a lot of dirty 30s. There is a lack conditioning. So this person just grew up without a lot of resources, and you never spent your resources. A penny saved was a penny earned. This chart has a 8-degree Sag rising. It has Pluto in the 8th house, 1718 Cancer retrograde. Look at the opposition to Saturn here at 9 degrees Capricorn, and a T-square to Uranus over here in the 4th house Aries at 9 degrees. And I saw this chart and I went, oh, here's the outer layer, here's the middle layer, here's the core layer. Now, I don't know how much Kundalini expansion this soul has done at second stage consensus. Asking my husband, Leroy, running the board, his opinion, because this is his dad's chart. Now, part of the reason why I'm bringing this chart up, there's a couple of different things here. We have the 3 planets of the root chakra in a T-square. And this is a person who has always had fear of survival, who has always suppressed any individualization. It was all about security and safety. It was all about the entire conforming to the consensus world. Part of the reason why I thought, oh, this is an interesting example for this chart is that this is a soul who has had prostate cancer that metastasized to the bone. So here's co-ruler of the prostate, Capricorn. This is going to start to bring in some of that suppression. Squares to Uranus, some crystallizations going on here. Bone cancer. This is bone. This is cancer. He is an 8-year survivor of bone cancer that originated in the prostate. The therapeutic use for this has been to mediate with pain pills and female hormones. First house, first seventh rule, the adrenals and the male-female hormones. So again, it's not going to be something that's necessarily going to stick out, that you would know this by the chart to then jump to that. But you might wonder what's going on. The survival issues, although I'm sure this soul felt them on a very physical level, growing up in the dirty 30s without anything really, carried it forward more emotionally. Because at this point in life, this retired person is pretty comfortable and still worries about $3 loaves of bread as too much money. So it's almost like the survival issues with this Pluto signature, Cancer, 8th house, have become more emotional. You also see here's the moon in Aquarius, square the nodes. I will say this, in general, in my 30 years of observing through the principles of evolutionary astrology, I find planets square the nodes. Here's the, again, sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system. Planets square the nodes are going to stress the overall nervous system. So whatever planet is square the nodes has this increased stress, and there gets to be physiological symptoms that can go on here. Moon in Aquarius, crystallized emotions, crystallized fluids. The prostate gland enlargement is, again, the seminal fluid not flowing. And the bone cancer is not being able to literally produce the immune system cells from the bone marrow, and that the bone crystallizing and turning to cancer. This also can be a signature of crystallized fluids in the body. So again, looking at this chart, you wouldn't automatically say bone marrow cancer. You might wonder about it as time goes by and you get more experienced in looking at it this way. You start asking the questions. Is there a history of prostate issues in your family, Uranus opposed Pluto? Is there a Saturn opposed Pluto? Yeah. Is there a history of arthritis? Is there a history of, crystallizations coming through on emotional levels? Yes, yes, yes. So I will have this tendency to ask it as a question. But looking at a chart, you cannot, it's a big leap to just start projecting it out there. And it takes a lot more observation correlation compared to, say, emotional, mental, spiritual patterns, because that crystallization into that densest form has a variety of different ways it can go. You could, in general, look at these 3 planets in this T-square and go, there are survival issues. There could be conformity and tightness, especially knowing the evolutionary state of second stage consensus. But the manifested imbalances, be gentle, ask questions, get feedback. Comments or questions from you, Leroy, as you've looked at this?
Oh, it's hard to be real objective with the chart that you of your own father, but yeah, you can certainly see the thing that impressed me the most, of course, is the potential for dehydration, which is a part of this exercise tonight, understanding that Uranian function of, you know, how it can affect ourselves. You know, fourth house, all of our emotional body there, Uranus and Aries, you know, then all that Aquarius in the second, you know,
Yeah.
just
These.
the moon in Aquarius, square the nodes. This is a soul that never gave himself permission, or was never given permission to ever express his emotional self. I mean, you know, when you grow up with a mother who literally could not speak English, and you had to teach her English in order to just bring her into the world, you know, and of course, among all the other chores of a farm family, an agrarian family in the upper Midwest, you know, there was never any time to kind of deal with that emotional body. So the dehydration aspect is what really impresses me, and I guess is something that I've tried to learn to adopt into my own life too, you know, hydrating.
And dehydration on a physical level, and yet on an emotional level, exactly what you're saying is
Same
dehydration.
thing. Yes, there's a physical manifestation of an emotional component, and you know, we all have to be aware of that propensity, I'm afraid. Yeah.
The other thing, though, that I have found to be interesting, and this is the good old German stock. I did not know that your maternal grandmother had to be taught English. Both parents of Leroy Germans, or no, both your dad's parents Germans, but 8-year survivor of bone cancer. So even though we're seeing this here, you know, looking at what's going on with this person now, you can see there's some transits here. He not only served, I thought Grandpa would go when Pluto went over his Saturn. Look at Pluto here as it's been going this year back and forth into his second house, still with us. Neptune over the sun here, if you're looking at some of the transits, still with us. Let's see how we do with Neptune over Venus next year, 2016, because this is going to be the overall immune system, and this is going to be the functioning of the kidneys right here. We'll see Venus in the kidneys. You know, there's some other things that are going on, and perhaps as Uranus has been going over it didn't quite get to the 5th house, so next year, I mean, there may be some transitioning that might go on here, and there may be some other aspects that you guys are seeing as well. Saturn's going to get ready to leave this 12th and go into the 1st here. So again, figurative or literal, and when you get a allopathic diagnosis of bone cancer, they don't ever give you projections of 8+ years.
But the ultimate irony for his second son, you know, in our relationship has been that since the diagnosis, and since his
son's in 3rd, honey.
Well, I'm talking about me, his second son.
Oh, second son.
Not a son in Pisces 3rd, no. But you know, I'm not speaking for my older brother, I guess is what I mean to say. But you know how we all return to our childlike state. It's been easier for me to have a relationship with my father at this stage of his degraded physical existence. He's become a much more emotionally sensitive man. You know, as he's fading away, Neptune, Pisces over that Sun Venus, and he's been willing to actually hug his kids and say I love you. You know, which was not in his repertoire for the first 75 years of his life, and he's going on, I think Grandpa would be 87, 88, so, you know, that's been interesting byproduct of all this, maybe not relevant to the class. But.
because, and I just want to say for the listeners, because the bone cancer originated is in the prostate cancer first. When Grandpa said, just give me pain pills, I'm going to go home and die. They says, well, the only thing we can do, we can give you the pain pills, but we can give you female hormones, Venus rules, estrogen, progesterone. They said, we can give you female hormones because it originated there. And so that's what he's had for the last 8 years. And Grandpa jokes about growing breasts. And like Leroy just said, all of the emotional stuff that that he's been opening up to. So perhaps in some way, Neptune, crown chakra, there has been some opening up in consciousness, some way, some layer, some level. Again, this is not a full chart interpretation. It was just specific to trying to give somebody an example of the root chakra. And in this, consensus case, for the most of his life, a shutdown of that root chakra. My situation was an entirely different thing. Although my root chakra was pretty closed down, early on in a life, I was able to really activate it and turn that shutdown into a strength, which is what it all is for all of us. Again, that root chakra is being able to ground ourselves, and can we expand in consciousness till we turn weaknesses into strengths. And in Grandpa's case, second house polarity is going to be self-reliance. I have an 8th house Pluto in Virgo. Second house, self-reliance. Now, one of the things that I would like to do here is just remind everybody that in a month we'll do the sacral chakra and sexuality. And again, I'd like to say, if you have stressful aspects to Jupiter or Neptune, or you have sexual imbalances, you are welcome to volunteer your chart by connecting us. And then the last thing that I would like to do is just quickly, I'm not going to explain these, and this is not a totally inclusive list. It is working with just some things in general per the 12 archetypes. And these are all specific to Pluto, but you can extrapolate these. And so I want to just run through these so that they'll be on the PowerPoint slideshow if you would like to access these and look at them.
And of course, you'll get that slideshow with all the audio and video links as usual for those that participate in our webinars. In the next couple of days here, I'll be sending that out. Be looking for an email from MediaMonk at evolutionaryastrology.net.
And so, Leroy, questions, comments? I know you run the board pretty good.
It's been a very polite board tonight. We had a couple people on and off with a few issues, but nothing dramatic. I guess one interesting question that did show up on the board was related to past lives, Kim, as you're going through these slides, was from Dom. And Dominique asked, once a Kundalini is awakened in another lifetime, is this something that must be cultivated in the current lifetime or re-experienced? I thought that was an interesting question.
So let me rephrase it and see if I'm hearing it right. If there has been some Kundalini work in a past life, must it be experienced again in this lifetime?
Yes, if there's awareness that it was awakened in another lifetime, is there something that must be cultivated or re-experienced in the current lifetime?
In general, I think there can be some variables with that. If between that life and other past lives there's been some stressful experiences, perhaps some of that previous work might be suppressed and brought up again. In general, I would say that we would be able to carry some of that forth. It's a widely varied question, and it's going to depend a lot upon each individual circumstance. Let me show this, let me give some feedback from a different perspective in regards to this. For instance, there are many of us in the evolutionary astrology studies that go back far enough to where we remember what it was like to live in natural law, remembering what it was like to live in indigenous times, where we very holistically and ritually used plant materials to do vision quests, to do spiritual work. We've then come forth with so many other lifetimes of the distortions of the patriarchy and put these overlays on that we may have to peel off some of these patriarchal distortions and overlays to really be able to access all of that energy, talent, and wisdom that we perhaps once knew. And I'm talking about being able to access it on a more and more and more conscious level. And
Right.
that is exactly what almost all of us are doing with our EA studies, with any past life regression therapeutic work. In general, the ending of the Piscean age, there are so many of us trying to throw off these patriarchal overlays that have distorted natural spiritual laws and principles, so we can return to that essence of what we once knew and evolve it and expand it to be a conscious tool that we can utilize and activate this lifetime. Easier and easier in future lives.
I guess that makes sense on the heels of the first Saturn-Neptune square, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Another question that just came into the board, Kim. Will the Uranus layer of the root chakra be activated during one's Uranus opposition?
Oh, it'll be activated by any Uranus forecast. Anytime forecasting Uranus makes an aspect to a natal planet, it's going to be activated. As I said earlier, I have transiting Uranus in Aries' third house, and I am working through, let me, if I can put my chart up fast for you guys, okay? I'll put it up. Anyway, I have a Uranus opposition to Jupiter and a Uranus opposition to Mars. And so I've got a couple of different things that are going on for me. And so, oops, I guess I don't. I'm so used to doing copy send. There. So here's transiting Uranus right now for me, and you can see these oppositions to Jupiter and Mars. And so here is my, that core layer of my root chakra. I'm having to have some grounding. I have been craving being outdoors in nature because I've been so busy with work and teaching. I can get so stirred up over something with someone, okay? And then here's these natal planets over here in the ninth, Jupiter in its own house, in its sign. This could be liver issues. It could be breath work, also goes in the third and the ninth. This could be adrenal issues with Mars, power issues. I find myself needing to have a grounding as I'm having this whole ninth house consciousness awakening with Jupiter. That's the one of the ways where I'm really seeing this go on. And I'm having to have grounding when I don't always have frustration all the time, but it will come and go where I get really frustrated. And so I've been really trying to work with the whole nutrition thing here, for the assimilation of everything. This will bring in some of the hormones here with Libra. I haven't noticed so much hormonally. What I probably have noticed with this Uranus opposition here is holding my ground more and more and more firmly. Because if you guys know, Jupiter in Libra, Mars in Libra, well, where would you like to go? What would you like to do? And so I can find myself saying yes and then wishing I'd say no. And I did that over the course of the weekend and surprised Leroy because I made certain plans for us and then I sat on it and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not honoring me, that's not honoring my soul, and that's not honoring what I want to do. And so I changed the plans and said no. So this is how I'm catching on to this, specifically happening. On the
But it can be hard to grasp for you, Kim, because there's a lot of heat and a lot of air in that opposition right there, and it's all mutable. So you're going to catch. What I notice is you ground yourself, you liberate yourself, Uranus, third house, through grounding in the garden, through grounding in long walks. Just getting yourself out in nature, and
yeah, nature's been the biggest way of grounding myself through the activities and through the busybodiness. Uranus moving through the third. But the point that hearing the question, anytime forecasting Uranus is going to make an aspect to your chart, it's going to affect the root chakra and it's going to affect these two planets right here. So let's go back and look at these two planets and see where their rulership is. Now we will study these in more detail. However, let me catch up. Uranus is opposing Jupiter, my sacral chakra. Can I tell you that I have been having fun with my hubby through this transit? Uranus opposing Mars, the power chakra, which again we'll get to. And so part of what's been starting to become more and more clear for me with these Libra planets is I've got to become more decisive. I've got to just own my power. I've got to do the yes and the no's and the yes and the no's. And again, like Leroy said, I'm starting to clarify some of my Libra wishy-washiness, some of my Libra easygoing, whatever you'd like to do, XYZ, anybody else, and going, nope, doesn't work for me. I got to honor myself. That's probably how I'm seeing this activated. So,
or to say no first, and I'll get back to you.
and I counsel that all the time, and I'm having to take my own medicine. So I hope that I was clear in that. Anything else?
Nope. If you're clear, that was a great example. I'm glad we ended on that note. It was real relevant.
All right, so I will leave this here for everybody so you can see this chakra rulership thing, and then I will remind you that in a month, I think it's December 14th, we will look at the sacral chakra and sexuality. Say that one fast 3 times. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in, and hope to see you next month. All right. Adios.